seeing money through and thinking about money. So bringing us up to today is definitely unprecedented times. I mean, you can read any opinion that you want in news articles, but we can pretty much all agree that we're not exactly sure what today is going to look like. So amid the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic influence that it's had, and some of the things that it's set our economy up for, what are some things that we should be aware of today? Because as a general public, we hear a lot of fear and we hear a lot of nervousness and anxiety that comes along with that, and we feel those, and we can be okay to feel those. Yeah. But what are some ways that we can be stewards in a time like today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing, so, this is really the second. I was in basically high school and college when we went through like the tech bubble crash in 9/11. So that was like early 2000s. That was a bear market that we had, a recession that we were in. But I got into the financial planning business shortly before the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, which was a really scary time. There was risks of our whole financial systems, melting down and things like that, and just a lot of, fear going on. And now, obviously, just from a economic standpoint, this could be more severe, potentially. At this point, it's not yet, but we could get there very easily. And so I think that, the causes of each of these are different and they feel really scary every time. But I think it's also important to recognize the response is often the same in each of these things. And so that response is often, fear that can then lead to panic. And when panic happens, it can often lead to irrational decision making. And so I think that, that's what we want to try to avoid. We want to try to think, rationally. We don't want to just get sucked up inside of ourselves. We want to continue to look outside and see how we can be helping other people. I think, even just with, don't want to get maybe too focused on investments, but there's a real fear when you see the stock market decline by, 34%, the S&P 500 from its peak just a little over a month ago until Monday at its close was down 34%. This week it's, rallied and been up 20%. But down, significantly during that time period. And there's, I think, a real, fear and desire maybe to sell those investments. And I think that would be irrational thinking, though, in that time. If you're looking from a long-term standpoint, I think what we want to try to avoid is timing, those investments and trying to think rationally. Potentially even, if resources are available to buy, more stocks at this point could be a valuable thing to do. So again, maybe don't want to get too much into the specifics on this call of what that would look like, but those are some things to be considered. I think also this, if those of you who are familiar with Dave Ramsey, and, the first thing he talks about is having an emergency fund. And when things are going really well in the economy, emergency funds can kind of seem silly. And, why do I have this money sitting here earning 1% or less when I could be investing it in the stock market that was up 20% in 2019 or 30% even potentially? But we see in this environment of just the importance of, having something like that, because you never know when a job could be lost, or there's even opportunities to help out other people with some of those resources. One thing I've just even thought about, just so today, the CARES Act is what they've named it, passed, which is a $2 trillion kind of economic stimulus package. And with that, people are going to be receiving about 90%, they're projecting, of Americans will receive some kind of money from this. There's many other things included with this, but as a family, for my wife and I, and having 3 kids, we're going to get like $3,900 as a result of this economic stimulus package. And so one thing I think even to think about with that is, if you are still employed during that time of, this is money you weren't expecting to get, I think that stewardship piece is saying, well, this is ultimately God's money. I've gotten it unexpectedly. And yes, there's nothing wrong with using it to shore up your own situation or do your part in reviving the economy. But I think also it's a real opportunity to look around and see what are the needs around me, and how could I use this money to benefit others as well. It's an unpopular kind of way to look at it, but I think that that's the first question that we should be asking is, if this is God's money ultimately, how could we be using it to bless other people? So.
Yeah, definitely. There's, a number of surprises that come with money, good and bad. But having that common denominator of understanding it's God's money, we didn't magically have it. However much we did to earn it didn't make it potentially that much more valuable at the end of the day. That's super wise to kind of have, and especially when it gets hard to think like that, especially when you have mouths to feed, you have anxieties that are very real, and trying to have a peace of mind there. I think that monetarily is a sufferable. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Something super important, and not to sound like a broken record, but I do think that that's something very important to continue thinking about. Now on the point of the stimulus package, the CARES Act, we're obviously seeing some stimulation come into our economy and decisions that we'll personally make. But at a big picture, could you just bring some insight on what you think this the stimulus package will hopefully be doing for our economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I guess I'm not an economist, and I think that economists are often wrong, I think, just as much as they are right. And it's hard to predict, what something like this the impact will ultimately be. But I do think, kind of two things come to mind, I guess, is that it will do one, the hope that it will be, well, first of all, these payments are not likely to probably be received until about May. So hopefully people can, kind of get by until that time. But I think for people who are losing jobs, or, have had income that's reduced for a season of time, these resources can be used to maybe pay off credit card debt that they've taken out from the time that, they lost their job until they received that payment. Or, just to kind of, bridge some of that gap. For families, I think it could be a helpful thing. Again, if they've just been struggling to get by during those months, it could be really helpful. But for those who are, employed, I think the thought is that, again, for my family, it's about $4,000. And so, if we decided to use it on ourselves and we weren't expecting it, maybe it's like, well, we could go on a vacation. And then the travel industry is one that's, being really damaged by this. And so I think just infusing money back into those things, having discretionary income for people that they, the hope, I think, of the government is that would be used for, things like travel and, eating out and just generally getting the economy back going, having money that people have to spend. Because I think the other thing that is true, and just talking with other people, I think this is true also, but if some people have been thinking about doing like a big home project or something like that, a lot of them have canceled that or put that on hold or said, we'll wait, as long as we can now to do some of those things that seemed like a high priority. And now it's like, no, we just need to kind of wait to see what happens. And so really there has been a huge pause. And if you look at unemployment numbers, it was like 3.1 million unemployment applications were received in the last month, which just blows away any other period that we've had historically for those applications in a month like that. So again, I'm not an expert maybe when it comes to exactly how that will impact things, but those are just some of my initial thoughts.